Baruch Hashem, you're a bad Jew.
Shalom.
Exciting news, this episode is sponsored by Jewish Big Brothers and Big Sisters of LA. Check it out.
So when I hear that people are interested in signing up to be a big, I just want to go give them a hug and tell them it's the best choice you'll ever make. It's the best way to make an impact and to be with someone and trust the process. Know that Jewish Big Brothers, Big Sisters puts it together in a way that it makes an impact for everybody. And that connection for me is everything.
If I had to choose one word of what it was like to have a big, it would be awesome.
Just do it. Sign up for it. Everything that you're going to do is going to be more than you can imagine.
If you want to make an impact on a child's life, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of LA is accepting applications today. Go to jbbbsla.org. That is jbbbsla.org. You're listening to Bad Jew, the place where there is, yeah, I said it, no such thing as a bad Jew. And with me today is one of the very first guests on the podcast, Rabbi Benzion Klatzko. If you want to listen to his episode, you got to scroll all the way back to the very, very first episode of my podcast, back in, dare I say, the man bun days, where I had the man bun. But speaking of updates and new things that are happening, I want to share with you guys a life update, okay? And the life update essentially is this. I've landed in Israel. I'm safe and sound. I've checked into my studio apartment, thank God. The flight was a bit rough. Believe it or not, I did sleep the most on this flight, but I also got sick. That sucked. And I landed, and once I landed, I felt much better. I think it was the altitude. I think I was overtired in the altitude. But I got here, and right away, I could see the difference from the last time I was here in August till today. And I would say that the biggest difference I noticed is that Israel feels like there's a little bit more of a hustle and bustle than it did before. I think people are feeling like hopefully, God willing, this war is almost over. I think that's what's happening. I think the world thinks that's what's happening. I think even the IDF is anticipating that as peace talks are happening. But there's a hustle and bustle in the street, and it feels good. The energy is back-ish. It's getting there. So I'm really excited. And so I was very fortunate to have stumbled in to Oshpiza because it was my first night after napping an hour and a half a couple nights ago. I literally walked into Oshpiza where I had recorded back in August. And then I ran into Rabbi Benzion Klatzko. And I was like, I haven't seen you. I haven't even met you in person. And it's like, you're here. And it's a miracle. It's b'sheret. And so, of course, I had to invite him onto the podcast back again. My first time meeting him in person. It's really a treat to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, of course. So we're here in the Holy Land. By the way, one more thing. Normally we do the 4-minute Bad Jew challenge, but he's already done it. He did that 2 years ago. 2 years ago. That's crazy. He did that 2 years ago. So all you got to do, once again, go back to episode 1, and you'll see Rabbi Benzion Klatzko. He's going to be on there speaking about how the Torah is relevant to today. But today we're doing a different subject. Rabbi Klatzko, I would love to learn about new beginnings. That's very like on topic with what's going on in my life. I realize it's a little bit of a selfish learn on my part, but I would love to learn about what the Torah has to say, what Jewish wisdom has to say about new beginnings.
It's a great point. I mean, new is a big theme in Judaism. Rosh Hashanah, the new year, Rosh Chodesh, the new month. When we get something new and we're happy about it, we say Shachianu. New is special. And while we don't glorify the new, because tradition and things with a history are really important to Judaism, but we acknowledge that when something is new, it's exciting. Mm-hmm. So there's a really interesting psychological balance between something that is new and we get excited about it, and yet something that is new, but it's attached to something reliable and time tested. So that's just sort of an overview of how new fits into tradition and continuity. I'll tell you an interesting thing. I think you'll find this interesting.
Sure.
The Talmud has this one line that seems not necessarily consistent with our experiences. The line is, Kol haschalos kashos, which means all beginnings are difficult. Now, you started the podcast, and I know that in the beginning, to gain traction, it's hard. It's hard to get.
It's tough, man. It's real tough.
Right? What were the early days like?
So it's actually funny that you asked that. So I was lent a green screen by my rabbi, Rabbi Jack Mulol. Shout out to Rabbi Jack Mulol back at Aish in Los Angeles. And I didn't have a stand for the green screen. And this seemed like something that would have come with it, and I just didn't have it. So funny enough, there's a green screen, and there's actually a projection of like an artificial background behind me. And while I was interviewing, I actually had to hold it. If you look back at the old YouTube videos, you see my arms out like this. It looks like I'm doing a stretch for a long time. You don't know what I'm doing, but it's actually, I'm holding up the green screen because I didn't have a stand. And I was literally, I knew for a fact that, listen, this is episode 1. It's not going to be perfect, but I just got to do it. I just got to do it. I just got to get it out there because I have something inside me that just needs to get out there into the world. But I didn't know how to make it perfect. And, you know, being in the studio is the most perfect we can get. We've come a long way in this podcast now since then. That's 2 years of consistently releasing an episode every single week without fail.
Absolutely. And if you would have waited until things were perfect, maybe you wouldn't have gotten started because you're just waiting for too many things to fall into place. And sometimes you just have to say, you know, like the good is the enemy of the perfect.
Yeah.
And that's true. So Talmud's got this really interesting saying, all beginnings are difficult. But the truth of the matter is that is offset by another concept, which is that when we start, we get excited to start something.
Right.
So let's say in the beginning, you just came to Israel, you're going to study some Torah, and it's exciting. You know, a new class, a new concept, a new teacher. And if anything, maybe 3-4 months from now, that's when it gets hard because then it becomes a grind. Now it's not a grind, now it's fresh. So are all beginnings difficult or are all beginnings refreshing and exciting? Like, how do we look at that? It's like, and I heard this question was asked by a really great rabbi. His name is Rabbi Shalom Shvadron. Rabbi Shalom Shvadron, who was a rabbi, passed away many years ago, and he was a master of Musar, which means ethics and wisdom. And he said, are beginnings difficult or are they exciting and easy? Because if they're exciting, I'm motivated. So I'll give you my take on it.
Sure.
Beginnings are actually difficult, but we're excited because it's new, it's fresh. You know, the world is our oyster. We're going to conquer.
Right.
But if that's our mindset, the beginnings actually are hard because we're the only gasoline within us is like, this is so exciting, so I'm going to do it. And we're not thinking big picture. So beginnings are tough. Getting to the right mindset, like let's say someone's coming to study, if they know, like I'm here for, let's say 6 months, for example. I'm going to be here for 6 months. So then you say, okay, slow down. It's not a race. It's a marathon. I'm going to enjoy it. Then you're going to be able to make it to the finish line. But if it's the excitement of, wow, I just came and it's so fantastic and I'm meeting new people, but your mindset is not long-term. It's not the marathon. It's the race. So beginnings are tough. They're tough because it's going to change and you're not going to have the right mindset to continue the journey.
It makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I know a lot of people that they love to start things and never finish it. They like to lily pad from one project to the other because I guess there's a rush, like you've kind of illustrated, there's a rush to jumping on a new idea and you know, like even when I started the podcast, right, just as an example, or even when I just got here to Yeshiva, there's an excitement. I'm on a little bit of a high as we speak right now, you know, just because it's day 3, really day 2.5 in Israel right now, and you know, I'm high, but you know, come 2 weeks from now, reality is going to kick in.
Right.
I'm going to realize that things are expensive. I'm going to realize that I'm tired of going up and down these stairs over here in Israel, in Jerusalem. I'm going to realize that I really miss being able to just casually call Uber Eats when I'm feeling lazy to cook, right? And I'm going to realize that, I'm really going to be living in it, you know?
So what do you do about that?
Well, I think a lot of people will probably leave it, right? They'd probably quit.
Right.
For me, I just got to find a way to love the grind.
Right.
I think I was in Yeshiva yesterday. I was in one of the few classes I took yesterday with Rav Dov Ber. Shout out to Rav Dov Ber at Aish International. I asked him, when you're not experiencing the pleasures you're hoping you'll experience, what do you do? And he said, pray for them. Right?
Nice.
Is that the only answer that we could do? Is only pray that the unenjoyable becomes enjoyable, or is there more to that?
I mean, there is enjoyment in everything.
Right.
And it's really just a matter of focusing on the enjoyment. I'll give you an example. Raising kids, God willing, hardest thing you'll ever do.
Yeah.
No question. To raise another human being, it's like God saying, "Hi, here's a person. Do a good job." Like, really? Do a good job with the person? Like, what do you want me to do with them? I don't know. Everything. Make him moral. Make him ethical.
Right.
Make him knowledgeable. Make him self-sustainable.
Yeah.
Or her. It's a daunting thing, and it's expensive. So what happens is, like, we say, "Wow, this is hard. Maybe it's not enjoyable." So what do you need to do? You need to focus on the enjoyment of a child raising,
Right.
on the satisfaction of the sense of purpose, of the gift of being able to be a giver rather than a taker.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is visualization. The Rambam, Maimonides, very, very great rabbi, about 1,000 years ago, he said, in the beginning, things are going to be really exciting, and then there's going to be this grind. He says, what do you need to do? When you start it, you have to visualize. He says, just picture, what is it going to look like, and get into that mindset. Visualization. He even says when a person does repentance, like let's say they did something really awful, and in the Torah it says a person can backtrack. They could say, what I did, I regret. The Rambam says, you know what you need to do? You need to visualize yourself in that same position, at that same moment where you slipped and fell. Visualize that moment coming to you again. You're encountering that test, and then visualize yourself overcoming that. And then he says that's the trick. If you can visualize it, and the problem is that we don't have people with a vision, and therefore there's initial excitement. Mm-hmm. So you need to be a visionary. The owner of this particular podcast, his name is Rabbi Yosef Bahar.
Yeah, amazing guy.
We look at him like
he's right over there. He's amazing. He's immense. He's the reason we're able to do this podcast, by the way.
He is a visionary. Visionary is not like a title. Visionary, again, I love to quote the Talmud because it's so powerful. It says, Ezehu Chacham, what's the definition of a wise person? Wisdom. Haroa es hanolad, somebody who could see the future. A visionary. Someone who can visualize the future. So the Talmud is telling them something amazing. Right. The definition of wisdom is to be a visionary. If you can't envision how this is going to play out and correct for it or prepare for it right now, you're not going to have success. That's a mark of a lack of wisdom. So when you did podcast number 1, you must have, at some level, said one day there's going to be a podcast number 20 and 30 and 40. And perhaps this is how it's going to play out. And then you allow the process to unfurl itself, and then you end it up here.
Definitely. And I liken it, there's so many things that you can liken to this as well, but to going to the gym, right? When you go to the gym, day one, so many, I'm going to call them the January 1sters, the guys who show up to the gym because they carried a New Year's resolution. And right, the busiest day of the gym is January 1st. The slowest day of the gym is February 15th. That's just actually statistically a fact. That's roughly the dates that happens. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think your message also is very relevant to people that are complainers. Now, part of the problem with complainers, no offense to those out there, is that most of y'all aren't aware that you are complainers. You think of yourselves as people that are just making conversation, and I understand that, and I sympathize with that. But complainers need to hear this message that Rabbi Klatzko has said so well, because when you were able to, you're essentially talking about manifesting. Is this the Torah's version of manifesting, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to manifesting,
yeah,
a person needs to know that complaining is not a solution.
Right.
Complaining is you're vocalizing what's going on inside of you. And we do that. You ever see a child and they fall, thank God I have many children, and they have fallen many times. And it's a very interesting thing. You'll see a little toddler, 3, 4, 5 years old. They fall, and then you see them like stunned or looking around.
And you
then
point and you laugh. Oh, sorry.
They'll look around and they'll wonder, am I hurt? Like, and then they'll see that there's an adult there, and then their face will like slowly turn into a cry, and then they'll let out. And as an adult, they say, "Well, sorry, you didn't get too hurt. I mean, you were okay a minute ago. You're just looking around, but now you see there's somebody to respond to your crying.
Right.
So then you cry. What the child is doing is the child doesn't have the tools to deal with the pain or the hurt or the mishap. So the way they deal with it is to just vocalize it, verbalize it, and emote.
Because it's attention seeking.
It's attention seeking.
Right.
That's how they deal with it. Wow, I'm going to cry and you're going to solve my problem.
Right.
That's what complainers do. And I happen to be on a trip right now. I have a lot of college students. And the number one rule on my trip, we tell them this in the airport. So the number one rule on it's called Akiva. The number one rule on the Akiva trip is no complaining. That is literally the number one rule. You complain.
I love that.
We tell them, you complain, we're going to make like 2 rows you're going to have to walk between, and we're just going to slap you. Like, don't kill the trip.
Right.
Yes, sometimes falafel soggy. Sometimes the pizza is just, I'm a pizza snob. I like a nice crunchy, crunchitude in my pizza. What could you do? But look how much you got. You're in Israel.
Right.
You're on a trip.
Right.
What'd you pay? A few $100? And
right.
So complaining, we need to know how to deal with it.
Right.
And in the Torah, again, the Jewish people, when we left Egypt, one of the things that we did that really took us out of God's favor was we complained again and again. We complained in the desert. We complained about the mun. Mun is that bread from the heaven that God gave us. And we complained, it all looks the same. What do you mean? But it could taste like anything. Mun was this kind of bread that whatever you visualize it tastes like, yeah, but it doesn't look like meat. And then there's not enough this, there's not enough that.
Right.
And they were called complainers. And that was sort of a disparaging way of looking at the Jewish people. God just vanquished the greatest kingdom in the world, Egypt, split the sea for you. He humbled them, and then you're complaining about, about meat versus chicken. Like, come on. I
mean, I get that it's a total knee-jerk human reaction to things, right? You especially if that's when you're born. If that's all you grew up learning how to do is complain, then naturally you're just going to take after what you've learned. But surely there's a time and place for when to complain. Right?
Absolutely. When we came to Israel a few days ago, so we moved into this building, and we got very American kids here, and there was no hot water for a few days. So the first day, okay, it's a mistake.
Relatable.
But the second day, there's no hot water, and all the guys and girls like, how do I take a shower? And instead of complaining, this awesome group that I have, they started posting. I took a cold one. Wow, it's sort of like what's called an ice bath.
Yeah, they're taking the ice bath. They basically did the ice bath challenge.
It's an ice bath. They're posting. It's good for the immune system. Oh wow, that woke me up, and it's amazing. And they're all trying to find the positive in no hot water. Like, who are you? Like, I love you already.
These kids, I got to say, I ran into them the other night, and Rabbi Klatzko lovingly sabotaged me by having me briefly speak in front of them. I was thankful for that, by the way. I say sabotage very facetiously. Mm-hmm. But you had me come and speak to the group, and then I saw them this morning, and even just hearing like some of the words they had to share about their experience and the trip so far, I was very inspired by this group. You really know how to pick them. And, each one of those kids, each one of those young adults on that trip, I say kids as if I'm not one of them, they're amazing. They really are people that if you just listen to, they should be on the podcast. I'm not that inspiring. These guys are the inspiring ones.
Can I plug the trip?
Please.
Yeah, if you want to come to Israel, I go a few times a year. Akivatrip.com, AKIVA, Akivatrip.com. It's $300, 15 days in Israel. We wine and dine you, and it's just the happiest group on earth. And we dance every morning.
That's a deal.
Dance and real bonding and growth. We're looking for people of sterling character, which it's a little bit harder to find, but not that difficult, because we all try to be good, and we're looking for people who want to learn what Judaism has to offer them in their lives. And if you have those two things, good character and a desire to learn and grow in your Judaism, then akivatrip.com, and 300 buckaroos, I think, money well spent. That's like, all that is like 100 slices of pizza.
Yeah, no, that's actually...
That's a terrible metaphor. But
that's an incredible pitch. That's a really well-funded trip. That's an incredible opportunity, and everyone should take it. I'll make sure that link is in the description of this episode when we release it. Rabbi Klatzko, any final words that you want to share before we send off?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be a good person. You want to be somebody who can inspire others. See the good in people. See the good. When we complain, when we look, it's in Yiddish, there's an expression, a beza ayin, to look with a bad eye. And it's so easy to find fault in people. It's the easiest thing, because none of us are perfect, and they're not my type, or they looked at me the wrong way, or they're in my space, or they just annoy me. And really, the great people, they look at the world through magic eyes. And magic eyes are the eyes that literally have the ability to find the good in everyone they meet. So much so that they turn a blind eye, but in a positive way, to the shortcomings, knowing that if the next person has a shortcoming, so they do as well. So we all have shortcomings, and even though we have shortcomings, we want people to see the good in us. We don't want people to see where we fall short. So we should reciprocate, or even preempt it, by looking at the good in people. And what that will do is, besides helping you live a happier life, you will become beloved by those who you meet, because like King Solomon says, Kimayim panim el panim kein lev ha'adam. Like a face views its reflection in the water, so is the heart of man. When I look at my face in the water, I like what I see. I like my reflection. The heart of man's the same way. If we look at each other and I reflect to you my love for you, my positivity for you, and my seeing your goodness and your potential and your virtue, it will reflect back, and you're going to see that in me. And if we can do that, I am telling you, not only will the world be a better place, but we will find ourselves becoming better people and living much happier lives.
That's amazing. And I just want to be vulnerable for a second from what you just said, because even just that alone had a little bit of impact on me. Externally, I think you can tell. I think a lot of people can tell I'm a very optimistic person. I'm very eager to learn. I'm very proud of that. But speaking of that pride that I just mentioned, when I come across a complainer and I come across people that I find annoying, yes, there are people out there that I do find annoying, I do get judgmental. I do. And I keep it internal. It bottles up. And even when I'm alone and I know I'm alone, I'll speak to myself as if they're in the room. I'm sure many listeners out there have done this, where they have an argument in the mirror with themselves as if they're speaking to the person they're annoyed at, right? And I totally do that. It's spewing out the most like toxic, vile things. And I'm totally guilty of it. I'm sure there are listeners out there that are like this too. I mean, surely I'm not the only evil one, impure one out there. But what I'll say is that I think that's a muscle that needs to be exercised, is the ability to overlook shortcomings, to appreciate what people's strengths are. I think that's well said.
Challenge yourself. Find one good thing in each person.
Yeah.
You don't have to fool yourself. One good thing, and finish with this idea. In photography, sunsets are beautiful. Mountain ranges can be majestic. But there is nothing more beautiful than a human face. And if you take a camera and you zoom in, let's say to an older person's face, and there's wrinkles and there's lines, and you look at them and you say, oh, wow, that's not the smooth face of a teenager or something in their 20s. Wow, they're really weather-beaten, and the hairline is up and the teeth may be a little bit, I've seen better days. But rather than that, you look at each line and say, wow, each line represents a challenge, a victory, a journey that they've been through. All of a sudden, their face becomes the most interesting thing in the world. their eyes, their gray gleaming eyes of an older person is somebody who's been through the ringer and has come out the other side with lessons learned and lessons taught. And if we can, if that's a human face, imagine a human heart.
Wow. I love that. And I could talk about subjects like this for days, which is why I'm in yeshiva, but I just want to thank all listeners for listening to Bad Jew, which for now on will start to be called Yehudi Ra. Thank you for listening to Bad Jew. We'll see you on the next episode next Wednesday. And again, Rabbi Klatzko, thank you for being on the podcast. Seriously.
Real pleasure.
Really a treat.
Shalom.